Welcome to me watching every single winter 2019 hentai anime. Now, I originally recorded some of this. I watched one show, but the footage got kind of fucked up. I don't know if it got corrupted or what the fuck happened. But now I'm doing things a little bit differently, so it should go correctly. And so I'm just going to go over the one that I already watched right now, and then we'll get into the random number generator that I have up here. So the first one that I watched was called Bitch Gakuen ga Seijun ga Hazu ganai, or Nahazu ganai, the animation. And I watched the first episode of it because the second episode had not aired, and I don't think it has aired quite yet. And I thought it was not very good. I did not think it was good whatsoever. I found it incredibly confusing, and just generally unappealing to look at. And the confusion factor is definitely the thing that I took most offense to when it came to this show, because like with most shows you have a very clear setup, you have a very clear follow through, but with this show there was no setup whatsoever, and it felt like it was only follow through. So like they were making references to like character dynamics without actually establishing them. They, made references to stuff like the main character and his sister, and like that the principal of the school that they were in was like his aunt or something. I'm not entirely sure, but there was some weird character dynamics that I really wish they would have gone further in depth with, because the show was only like 20 minutes or something. It was a really short episode. It was only 20 minutes. So I feel like they could have made it 5 minutes longer, or even 10 minutes longer for that matter, and used that extra time to not only provide some transitions between the scenes, because there was literally no breathing room. It was just H scene after H scene after H scene. But also to like have some establishment, like establish what the hell is actually going on, because I didn't understand a single thing. I think I'm supposed to believe I have something about his sister. Like, I definitely get that it's incest. They made that patently obvious. But I really did not get anything else out of it. And there's no synopsis on my anime list, so I couldn't even reference that. I remember I watched it back and tried to figure out what was going on, and it kind of made a little bit more sense. I still don't get what the hell happened at the very end, when it sort of zoomed out and it was like this panel of monitors, and I think the principal is who that was watching them the entire time just have sex. Very weird, very confusing. Didn't really look all that great, like from a visual perspective. Was not animated that well. The visual design was not that good. It was in HD, so for a good-looking show, that would be a bonus, right? But for this show, because it already looked like shit, being in HD only made like the really shitty parts look even shittier. So go figure. Not the best. If I were to finish watching it and the first episode, if it was paced exactly like, or I guess the second episode, if it was paced exactly like the first episode, probably would give it maybe like a 3, maybe a 2 or 3. But I'm probably never going to get around to rating it, just because I only rate things that I finish, and I don't think I'm ever going to get around to finishing this one. It has a 6.2 on Mal. Seems about right. Honestly, probably, I think it'd be even lower, to be honest. Was not very good, but I haven't seen anybody really talking about it, so I don't really think it's getting any attention. With that out of the way, we're going to move on to the other shows, starting with whatever I have on this list. If you can see that. Hopefully you can see that. That there is the list, and that there is a random number generator, and we're going to find out which show I'm going to be watching next. 6 is Hinagiku Virgin Lost Club A Youkoso. So there you go. That's what I'm going to be watching. I'll see you then. just got done watching Hinagiku Virgin Lost Club a Youkoso, and I thought it was interesting at first, but it was animated by Queen Bee, so I can't give it too much praise. I mean, not because I don't think that Queen Bee can make anything good, but rather that Queen Bee doesn't make anything good. So the animation, awful, really, really bad, super stiff, lots of pans, lots of tweening. Nothing about it was good. The art itself was good, but I sort of chalk that up to source material. In fact, I'd probably recommend just reading the manga, although actually I don't think it's translated yet. So, but if by the time you're watching this it has been translated, I would recommend just reading that instead, because the anime was not animated very well because it was by Queen Bee. The character designs were decent. They weren't anything special. They were pretty cliche, but I guess that sort of fits with the narrative, since the narrative wasn't all that original either. I mean, the actual premise of the show with the whole blindfold thing and pretending to be someone you're not, that was interesting, but they sort of took it too far into the realm of absurdity when you started to introduce these other characters, at the same time pretending to be Moege-san. It didn't really make any sense. I guess we're supposed to believe that the main character has an IQ sub 80 because he really is just retarded. He has 3 girls all laying on top of him, and he still thinks it's just this one girl, this Moegi-san, and it doesn't make any fucking sense. Near the very end, by this point there's 6 girls, and they all take him on vacation, and he still, for fucking whatever reason, believes that there's only one girl, and it doesn't make any fucking sense. It was, at that point, it was almost comedic how absurd it was. I was fucking laughing my ass off. But yeah, for the majority of the first episode, I think there was sort of an interesting character dynamic going on. But by the time you get to sort of the later end of the first episode, and then all of the second episode, any interest was sort of replaced by just fucking what the fuck, I still think that maybe watching the first episode, give it a try. Why not? It's okay. If I were watching this just on my own and I wasn't doing this thing where I have to watch whatever episodes are currently out, I probably wouldn't have watched the second episode. I probably would have just been content watching the first episode. But like I said, just wait till the manga gets translated, and I guess if you speak Japanese, just read the manga. But yeah, it was not all that great. I think I gave it a 3 out of 10. Maybe I gave it a 4 out of 10. I don't really know. I think it only has 2 episodes. I don't think there's any more that are going to come out, although I could be wrong. The show definitely was the show was definitely better constructed than most other hentai anime would be, especially, hentai anime that are being released nowadays. The narrative actually made sense, kind of. As absurd as it was, it did actually make sense. I could understand and I could parse what the hell was happening, and it seemed pretty coherent, like I said, absurd, but coherent. And it was certainly something that, it was refreshing to see when it comes to hentai anime, because I've noticed that a lot of hentai anime, especially in the narrative department, have just sort of given up, I guess, for lack of a better term. They just seem content to do literally nothing but present slightly animated H scenes. And I'll give it to this show for not just doing that. It actually had some level of narrative, and once again, you can chalk that up to the source material. As most praise that you can give in H anime, you can chalk up to the source material, unless it's an anime original. But still, to see something like this, be animated, albeit animated incredibly poorly was definitely refreshing. So I think that's all I have to say about that. There wasn't really that much going on in the show other than that. The actual, well, I guess I could touch on the character types. There were 6 different girls. Well, I guess there were 7 different girls, counting Moegi-san at the very end. And each of them was super stereotypical. You had the sort of shy girl, with the long hair. She was the main one, Hinagiku. From who excuse me. I guess I could touch on the character types because they were pretty stereotypical. You had Hinagiku, who, the show was named after. She's sort of the shy type, the kind of studious. She's got glasses. You know who I'm talking about. Every show has one of these. You had the Imoto character. You had the Onei-san. You had the gal. You had sort of just the I hesitate to say tsundere, but I guess the Onei-san also was kind of a tsundere. There were a couple of characters in there that I guess weren't super cliche, like I don't remember her name, but one of the girls who had a crush on the main guy, she didn't really feel like any particular cliche, any particular stereotype, so she was probably the most original character out of them. That and one of the Emoto's friend, the little sister's friend, she was just kind of there, for the ride. She didn't really do anything. She just kind of showed up, had sex, and was like, fuck it, I might as well stick around. And then, of course, you had the idol. So pretty cliche, pretty stereotype. There were a couple in there that were original, but other than that, nothing you haven't seen anywhere. This is sort of the archetypal high school anime translated to hentai. So give it a shot if it sounds interesting, but otherwise I wouldn't bother. Just read the manga when it gets translated. I almost forgot the final part, which is what are we gonna watch next? I stopped recording and I had to start it back up again because I'm retarded. So let's pull up the list. So I'm just gonna I wonder if you can see that. Yep, that's about visible. So I'm going to mark this one just with a couple of those to mark that I've already watched it, and then we're going to generate a new number 2. That's Audacity. 2 is Kami-machi Sana-chan, the animation. So when I'm done watching that, which will probably be in the next couple of days, I will tell you how I feel about it. So I just got done watching Kami-machi Sana-chan, the animation, and I thought it was pretty decent. It wasn't necessarily my cup of tea, but I'll get into why in just a minute. But first, I just want to talk about the animation, because that was one of the things that kind of stuck out to me. It was animated by Pink Pineapple, and they're one of the bigger studios, so they have a little bit more money to throw around when it comes to the production end of things. And usually they produce really well animated, well drawn shows. They're one of the better studios. They're certainly not Queen Bee, and they're not. Oh fuck! I'm totally blanking on that one studio. The studio that produced Onichichi. They're much better than them because that studio, Poro only produces shows that look exactly the same. So they're certainly better than that. Their shows are distinct, but they're well animated and they look good. And this show's no different, but I definitely think that it's on the sort of lower end of that spectrum because I think the industry as a whole is just sort of in a slump. I think that, overall it's just not bringing in enough money. I don't know why that is. I don't have that information, but I can tell just based on the works that are coming out over recent years that, maybe there's just not as much, money in that industry. So I can kind of cut them some slack there because it still was proficiently animated. It's a hentai anime, so obviously there's going to be a lot of loops, a lot of stuff like that. I think I noticed some tweening, but I'm not entirely sure. It could have just been sort of a dodgy animation job. Couldn't say for sure. It definitely was drawn very well. The character designs were really good. I really liked the silver-haired girl, and I'm kind of upset that she only got like 5 minutes of screen time because I definitely liked her a lot more than the brown-haired girl. That's not to say I didn't like the brown-haired girl either, but I just preferred the silver-haired girl. But overall the character designs were good. The main character actually had a face that you could see, which is very refreshing when it comes to hentai anime because I hate the faceless guy trope. That's one of my least favorites. I thought it was pretty sweet on the narrative side of things. It was very down to earth. There wasn't anything that stuck out to me as being particularly weird. Going back to the animation, I just remembered something that really bothered me, and that was how the background characters, like just the no-names, the nobodies, were just drawn in as blue silhouettes. That really, I don't know why they did that. I assume it's, a budget-saving technique so they don't have to draw as many people, but, still, it was really weird, and it didn't look good, and it totally broke my suspension of disbelief, or I guess my immersion, or whatever the hell you want to call it. Really a bad look. Not quite as bad as, anime using 3D models in place of just drawing a bunch of people. I think that's far worse than this, and I can kind of excuse this, like I said, because of, I guess, budget constraints, but whatever. Doesn't really matter. On a whole, the show was a little bit boring, and that's just, I chalk that up to it being a very vanilla work. There was nothing that was particularly, fetishy or, I guess, interesting when it comes to that regard, because the show is basically at its heart just a romance, just a down-to-earth, straightforward romance. The very beginning part of the plot, about the whole, searching for God app or whatever, that was, kind of brought up, but then just not necessarily forgotten about, but, it just didn't really hold any bearing in the rest of the episode. So I'm not sure what that was all about. I'm sure that's a little bit more fleshed out in the visual novel, but, I'm just judging it based on what we've got, and what we've got isn't, they didn't, really go in depth into what that was. They sort of brought it up, and then they did a time skip, and it was like, well, actually, here's what's going on now. Now the characters have just fallen in love, yada yada, here's what you want to see. There's a lot of flashbacks, which I'm, very short. Just added a little bit of variety. Nothing that was too out there. Felt a little bit disjointed because of that, but yeah, not that big of an issue. Very nice characters, I guess. I mean, they weren't that. They didn't have that much depth, I guess. But they were, they weren't unlikable in any particular way. So. And there were even hints at character development, with the main guy. You see him, I guess, saying that he's not like that anymore. He doesn't just fuck around with anybody. He's devoted to the brown-haired girl or whatever. So there's hints at character development, but it's only one episode, so you can't expect all that much from it. And I think that, maybe the show would have been better if they cut down the episode length to 20 minutes and then had 2 episodes. That would have given them maybe about 10 more minutes of runtime. But I think in terms of pacing and in terms of what you could do with these characters, it would have made it just that much better. You would have been able to take it that much further, splitting it up into 2 episodes versus just having 1, because generally, you can explore different things in each episode. Maybe the first episode, focus on the brown-haired girl. Second episode, focus on the white-haired girl. And if you want to keep that, away from NTR or whatever, just have it be in flashbacks. I don't know. I'm just, fucking brainstorming here. Possibilities of how to improve the work. Yeah, it was very entry level. So I think that, if you're just getting into hentai, you're not all that into the weird stuff yet, you're not completely bored with vanilla like I am, it can be a very good work because it's just very basic vanilla presented in a very good package. Very simple, clean, but overall, not my cup of tea. Just kind of vanilla. Would have preferred a little bit more fleshing out of the backstory, but I can't blame them. It's only one episode. So that's my thoughts on that. And now we're going to transition over to this thing right here. Try to get that into shot. And let's see what number we're going to get. 1. 1 is Wagaya no Liliana-san, the animation. And I think the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to have this one be the first one that we talk about in the next episode. And this is just gonna be the last one. So, there you go.